So, Smridhi, if I list out all your credentials and achievements, this video will be half over. So, can you just give a brief introduction about yourself?
Right. Thank you for having me for this
No,
podcast.
it's my pleasure.
My name is Smridhi Seth and I am a master's student of psychology. I am presently the co-founder of SirWay Me, that is my startup that is based on research in psychology and other social science disciplines.
Hmm.
I've been a student of psychology for more than 5 years now, and my interests lie in academics, entrepreneurship, yoga, painting. So I'll be completing my master's in May, and then I'll be
Right.
full-time pursuing my startup.
Hmm. And what does your startup do?
Right. So my startup is called SirWay Me, and we are an online organization who provide research services, data collection services, and data analysis for academic and market research.
Right. Okay. So, the topic that we decided to talk on today would be three parters, right? So,
Right.
the first part would be intelligence. So I think it's a very fascinating phenomena that psychologists have been studying for like 5 decades now.
Right.
So in your own words, can you describe what is intelligence?
So I understand intelligence as the ability to navigate through the world. It
Right.
includes your problem solving ability, ability to maintain relationships, ability
Hmm.
to adjust to the environment. So in very simple words, how a measure which tells you how you carry out your daily activities, your routine, and how you also add value to the life. So that is
Right.
what intelligence is.
How is it different from emotional intelligence?
Right. So emotional intelligence has been studied recently, and a lot of
Hmm.
work is being done on that by psychology, right? We are realizing its importance.
Hmm.
Emotional intelligence is a different component, but that is needed for you be to call a well-adjusted individual in the society. It's
Right.
not just your logical ability or your problem-solving ability, which we call as normal general intelligence, but emotional intelligence is how you understand yourself, how sensitive are you to others' emotions, how sensitive are you to your emotions. It helps you to maintain relationships, to interact with people, because if you
Hmm.
are only good at solving problems, or good at your work, your job, but you don't have a lot of friends, or you're not able to hold or sustain relationships, not able to interact with people, that component is fulfilled by something that we call emotional intelligence.
Okay. So this is kind of a philosophical question. Is it a myth that a person needs to be intelligent, or if a person is intelligent, he's happy?
Right. So a lot of researchers say that if you have a very high IQ, above
Hmm.
average IQ, that is 100, then you are not really happy and you lack emotional intelligence, because you
That.
are, yeah, you are focused on your mathematical ability so much that you lack the social skills to interact with
Hmm.
people, to adapt to the environment, right? People who are really smart, they are not usually called, in simple language, what we say, street smarts. They don't understand sarcasm. And popular example would be Sheldon from the Big Bang Theory. He
Right.
faces a lot of problem in understanding sarcasm
Hmm.
because he's a genius. So people who are extremely intelligent, we say that they are not happy. There are debates on that. That is because they understand the world in such a deep sense that for them, emotions such as happiness are not an integral part of their life.
Hmm.
So if you see a scientist, they can go days and days without eating, without taking a shower, without combing their hair, right? Because they are so focused on their work. And the only thing that matters to them is their work, is the
Right.
experiments that they are doing. So in such a way, we can say that happiness does get compromised. And people who
Hmm.
have a higher IQ are said to have, you know, that control over their mind, that for them experiencing positive emotions are not very common. They understand a phenomena, a concept so deeply in such a great level that you associate or you analyze it, all the negative things or all the critical
Hmm.
things of that aspect, instead of focusing on the positive aspect or the happy things that we
Right.
see.
Right.
So that does
So
happen when you
yeah.
overthink a lot, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So are intelligent people more likely to be cynical, or deconstruct every possible concept? Like it's not causation, it's correlation, and just because this happened doesn't mean that anything good will happen.
Yeah.
No.
Right. So geniuses do that, right? A lot of cognitive load, overload pressure, बहुत ज़्यादा
Yeah.
सोचना, overthinking, mental ability. It comes to a point of exhaustion in which they think about a lot of things to get what they want. So
Hmm.
perfectionism also becomes a problem, right? You want the
Hmm.
best possible results of what you are doing, and you won't accept something out of a certain level, right? If I want to achieve like this optimal level of my work and either be I reach, I am not happy, so I'll be
Hmm.
doing the thing over and over and over again to get what I want. So
Right.
that can drive me to the point where you can say that I'm becoming cynical about things. But
Hmm.
if you have emotional intelligence, which is what psychologists are studying, and that is what we really need to
Hmm.
develop, emotional agility in the workplace, how to adjust to your environment, how to not let
Hmm.
emotions affect you, because you are not your thoughts, right? So if you are working on your emotional intelligence and developing that ability, that is how you control these things with having a certain above average IQ. So
Right.
that is where it becomes important.
Hmm. So if we talk on the subject of IQ, so it is a common metric for performance of children in school, as well as
Right,
used in experiments by scientists. But there
right.
has been a lot of controversy surrounding that it is a single-minded approach. Right?
Hmm.
What are your views about it?
That is an absolutely relevant question, when we talk about IQ as a metric to measure performance. So there are a lot of debates in the history of psychology which say that,
Hmm.
questions such as, are IQ tests biased? What does an
Hmm.
IQ score mean? What does it predict? How valid is that? So the psychologists and researchers have been working on that. But I can simply tell you that the performance on a standardized IQ tests, what a child or an employee in the organization scores on the IQ test, it does act as a direction, we can say, a guide to how the candidate or the child will perform in the same field in future,
Right.
because the tests have been developed for a lot of time, years of works have been gone into that, and they have standardized it to different populations, they have tested it multiple times, they know if you score a certain amount, these are the results that will eventually come to you in
Hmm.
the future. So we can say that they are not 100% accurate, but they do give us a measure of, if you choose to work in that particular career or in the particular field in the organization, that because of the score you are likely to perform in this way, which can
Hmm.
be categorized into average, below average, or above average.
Hmm.
So that is why we use it for recruitment in organizations, and
Right.
psychologists test you and then you get selected. However, we cannot say that if you perform poorly on an IQ test, that means you are not smart or you are not good at that ability, because multiple intelligence exists, right? You
Right.
can do better in some other way. And I'll also tell you that IQ changes with age.
Okay.
Okay. So there are different types of intelligence. For example, fluid intelligence is there and crystallized intelligence is there. So it's a very interesting concept. When we talk about fluid intelligence, it peaks at the age of early 20s, and it
Hmm.
means that it measures your capacity to think, capacity to reason, and your ability to solve problems.
Yeah.
And when we talk about crystallized intelligence, crystallized means frozen. So that develops after the age of 40, and it measures your capacity to acquire that knowledge, apply that knowledge, and
Right.
recall experiences. So after the age of 40, you have had enough experiences to be able to use that knowledge, what we call as wisdom, right?
Hmm.
So you cannot measure this on an IQ test. So
Hmm.
that doesn't mean that someone above 40, if that person is taking an IQ test and you are taking the same IQ test at the age of 20, there will be discrepancy in the scores. So that
Definitely.
doesn't mean that someone is less intelligent or more intelligent, but there is different scores because of the experiences that you've had, right?
Hmm.
The fields that you are in, the exposure that you have had. So IQ test, we would use it as a measure because normal population gets sorted out in this way, but you cannot 100% rely on that.
Hmm. So, do you think is IQ genetically inherited or can it be increased by practice?
So, a classic debate in psychology is called nature versus nurture. That
Nurture.
is IQ. Yeah, nurture. Nurture means using the environmental factors, our socialization factors. How do you interact with your family, your friends, other people in your surroundings? So IQ gets developed through that. Nurturing a child through experiences.
Hmm.
And nature is the genetically inherited component, that is the genes that you inherit, and that affects your IQ. So
Hmm.
both the components work together in correlation to determine your IQ. And sometimes nature takes a dominant position, sometimes nurture takes a dominant position. But I strongly feel that nurture, that is the environment that you
Hmm.
provide to a child, to yourself, the content that you consume on YouTube. If we watch your podcasts, we get knowledge, right? If we talk to intelligent people, or generally interact with people, we gain a lot of knowledge. We work on ourselves and develop skills. So
Hmm.
nurture helps you increase your IQ a lot, and I'm a big fan of nurture. Nothing is impossible if you work on yourself, right? So nurture
Yeah,
is there,
it
but obviously
is.
nature helps.
Yeah, actually a very good philosophy to abide by, that you can attain anything even if your
Yeah,
genetics are not. Yeah, right.
absolutely. Hard. There is no substitute for hard work if you work on yourself,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? Talent versus hard work.
Yeah. And I think a lot of respect should be given to individuals who are hardworking, even if their success is not
Absolutely,
measured.
absolutely. We can take example of sportsmen, right? If we look at
Yeah.
Virat Kohli, right? You
Hmm.
cannot see his parents and tell that, Array, he is supposed to be a sportsman because his parents are
Hmm.
sportsmen. That is not the case, right? They were normal service class individuals working at a job, but he worked on himself. He was disciplined. He did a lot of
Hmm.
practice. So the nurture factor played here in making him a very successful sportsman.
Hmm.
So
Right.
if you work on yourself, things are achievable.
So if we take some, like we have already talked about the criticism of IQ, if
Right.
we would like to talk about some alternative theories such as
Hmm.
multiple intelligence theory by Howard
Right.
Gardner. So can you like describe it?
Right. So Howard Gardner was a psychologist who wrote a book
Yeah.
in the early 1980s called
Hmm.
Frames of Mind. So, according to him, there is not a general intelligence ability, which we in normal terms call logical ability or mathematical intelligence. How we
Hmm.
say that if you are able to perform well in tests, or if you are able to score good marks, if you have a
Hmm.
mathematical ability, then we say that you are smart. Usually, people who are students who are in the science streams are considered smart in comparison to students who are in the humanities stream. That
Hmm.
is the general norm in India, right? But that is not the case. So what Gardner said, that there are 8 types of intelligence that exists. So he talked about, we can start with linguistic intelligence, that is possessed by poets and writers, because they are able to understand words, vocabulary, and have a good grab at the language in comparison to us normal people, right?
Yeah.
So they score high in that. Then we talk about bodily kinesthetic intelligence.
Hmm.
That is how an individual uses their body movements to construct something. So let's say dancers, right? Ballet dancers. They have sportsmen even. They are
Hmm.
athletic in nature. They're flexible. They use their body to generate livelihood, right? So
Yeah.
that is bodily kinesthetic intelligence because they are good at that more than an average person.
Hmm.
Then we have interpersonal intelligence, which also comes from emotional IQ. That is how you are able to understand other people, right? And then we also have intrapersonal intelligence. That is how you
Hmm.
are able to understand the emotions, the strengths and weakness of yourself. So psychologists,
Yeah.
counselors, mental health practitioners, even
Monks.
entrepreneurs, absolutely come under the
Hmm.
intrapersonal intelligence because they have a high understanding of how I function. So
Yeah.
if you take the example of a psychologist, we sort of believe them to be a well-adjusted individual. So if
Hmm.
I am able to understand my emotions, I can obviously provide you therapy and counseling because I have
Yeah.
achieved that level. Which doesn't mean that I don't need counseling. I would also go for counseling, but I have a little better grab than you, so I'm helping you navigate through it.
Hmm.
Right. And then we have naturalistic intelligence. That is
Hmm.
how you are able to touch, feel, and see things in the real world. So, farmers, botanists, people in the profession of biological sciences have that intelligence. That means they are able to understand those things a little better than us.
Hmm.
So, These are the musical intelligence is there,
Yeah.
in which there are some people who are able to understand rhythms better. So musicians, lyricists, songwriters, they have a better grasp of these things. They possess
Yeah.
this ability at a high level, right? Rock stars. So they have musical intelligence. Now, if
Hmm.
you see up, there are students who are really good at music. They play guitar and everything, really good at painting.
Hmm.
They are not able to get a, you know, really brilliant marks in exams. That doesn't mean that they are not smart or because they're performing poorly on a test or they
Hmm.
score average marks. That is because they have different intelligence, right? They have musical intelligence. They have visual spatial intelligence
Hmm.
that is possessed by architects and painters, because they are able to see the world in 3D in their mind. They are able to imagine the distance between spaces. When an
Hmm.
architect sees a building, an interior designer, if we take an example of, when they see a room, they can ekdam aise quickly, understand how many tiles go in the room, on the wall of
Right.
the room, what is the length of the wallpaper required, what color would be best suited for the room.
Hmm.
So these are intelligence. They can do better at these things because they have that ability. Their mind helps them understand these things,
Right.
in comparison to you and me. If we go in a room, I cannot figure out how much wallpaper is there to be put in the on the wall of a room, right?
Yeah.
But they can do it quickly in seconds because they have that ability.
Hmm. So that's my problem with IQ, that it is so fixed. Like if a student has a low IQ, but he can sing very well, so he will be
Yeah.
deemed a failure in the eyes of people conducting that test. So
Hmm.
yeah, okay. So with the boom of technology, which has seen an exponential growth within recent
Hmm.
years as compared to centuries before.
Hmm.
So there has been this phenomena that intelligence of each generation, the IQ of each generation increases. So it's called the Flynn Effect. Can you
Right,
please
right.
share your insight on that?
Right. It's a really interesting concept. I read about it in my undergraduation 3 years
Hmm.
ago. Right. So there was a researcher called James Flynn from New Zealand who
Hmm.
studied IQ points of different generations. And what he found was that after every generation, according to that time, there was an increase of 3 IQ points.
Hmm.
So, discussing this phenomenon in simple terms, with every generation, our exposure to education increases,
Hmm.
right? Our health and nutrition increases. There is an improvement in that, and challenges in the environment increases.
Right.
Technological advances are there. So, with all these, considering all these factors, with every generation, there is also a 10-point increase in our IQ, of the standard population.
Then why are
But
people so dumb?
right. So, okay. This does not mean that we are smarter than our parents, let's say.
Yeah.
This only means that we have a better understanding and ability to apply and acquire skills that are needed for today's time. So, let's
Okay.
say you and I can use an iPhone better than our parents.
Hmm.
And there has been a steady rise in the IQ for us to
Hmm.
be able to adapt to this skill and to use it. Our
Hmm.
parents would be reluctant to use, smartphones, and they
Hmm.
are accustomed to their previous set of models, the button phones that we had, right?
Yeah.
But we are able to use it, and we want to use it because that ability is there, that rise in the skill has been witnessed.
Hmm.
So obviously there is a standard increase in the IQ. It increases, 10-point increases there, and the acceptance of that skill is also there. So that
Right.
is why we contribute the technological changes that is happening. We are calling each generation smarter because of something that we can call as the Flynn effect. And it's
Yeah.
called the Flynn effect because James Flynn researched on it. So
Hmm.
naturally he used his name to name the
Yeah.
phenomena. Though it does
So
happen.
suppose I'm a doctor who has years of experience in the field of cancer, right?
Hmm.
So, like, I want to tell my patient an unfortunate news that he has cancer, and he
Hmm.
asks me that how has he developed it.
Hmm.
So I go into the technical details of how the cells have mutated and how they have spread into his lungs and things like that. But I may be lacking the assumption that he is not as knowledgeable in the field as I am. Right.
Absolutely.
So what is this phenomena?
We call it the curse of knowledge
Yeah.
or the curse of expertise. So
Hmm.
it's a simple bias in communication. And it happens to mostly learned professionals, such as you quoted the
Hmm.
example of a doctor. So, for example, I'm a psychologist, I'm a doctor, I'm a teacher. When I'm communicating to another person, I'm explaining something to them. I
Hmm.
assume that they have the same cultural background or the same expertise that as I do.
Right.
So I am not able to break down the concept in simple words for them to understand. I use technical words. I use the things that I know. And it's also, I wouldn't say that it's my fault because I've been working in that environment, right?
Hmm.
So I'm constantly communicating with doctors, and we are supposed to use those jargons, those technical words to
Right.
understand the concepts that we are talking about, the problems, the diagnosis that we are
Hmm.
talking about, the illnesses. Now, when I have to communicate the same to a patient who is not an expert in the field, right? They want
Hmm.
a very basic explanation of what is happening to them. I might face some problems in telling them because it's a curse that I have a lot of knowledge. Now I cannot dumb it down for you. Right? Teachers teachers face that. For example, we say that अरे ये मैम जो पढ़ाती है I'm not able to understand. We sometimes label
Hmm.
teachers in such a way. Now the
Hmm.
teacher has a lot of knowledge. That is why she has been selected for that particular profession, right?
Right.
But they are not able to understand the concept through the position of a student who is
Hmm.
learning, who's there to learn. So they are not able to deliver that thing through their communication. So if you work on your vocabulary, you talk to a layman,
Hmm.
make that concept structured in very basic and simple words. That is how
Hmm.
you can overcome, which we call the curse of knowledge or the curse
Hmm.
of expertise. It's a common concept. It happens to me also when I'm talking to people who are not in the field of psychology, right?
Hmm.
So if you look like you are being smart by throwing these technical words, but if the other
Hmm.
person is not able to understand you, what is the point of whole communication? It has to be two-way, right? You have to gain something from it.
Hmm.
So it happens.
So is that why teachers are required to get a degree on in B.Ed, so that
Right.
yeah.
Because in B.Ed they provide you a lot of practical training, right? They teach
Hmm.
you how you are supposed to teach students, what is their
Hmm.
mental ability, their level of understanding, and how you have to explain things in a manner that they'll be able to understand.
Right.
As what is the point of just feeding information and they are not able to get what you mean?
Yes.
So a lot of
So
practical training is there.
I started studying cognitive psychology, and it is very tough. And what makes it a bit easier, tolerable, is that the concepts are understood in the way of a model or a framework. Like
Right.
you can compare memory to a computer. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a bit easier to understand the process instead of using jargons, which a layman may not be able to understand.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Okay, let's kick it off to entrepreneurship, right? So you have your own startup.
Yes.
So I know I already asked you, but in a bit more detail, can you tell what you do?
Right. So I've been studying psychology for more than 5 years, right? Since 11th
Hmm.
standard and now up till my master's, I'm specializing in the field now.
Hmm.
And in psychology and other social science disciplines, we are required to do research,
Hmm.
to collect data, right? To analyze data.
Hmm.
And we've always faced problem in collection of data because you must have received Google Forms from your friends, right? And
Yeah,
they
yeah.
must have begged you to fill it because they're not able to reach to a certain number of
Hmm.
responses. So data collection is a big problem that exists, and we don't have any professional services that helps you with it. So if
Hmm.
I have to do a research, I'll talk about it in detail later. How is
Hmm.
research done? So we need a we need to understand the opinions of students or people or whatever your population is that you are researching on.
Hmm.
For that, you are required to either interview them, you are asked to, fill surveys to understand how they
Hmm.
feel, to understand your research. So for that, when you circulate Google Forms, the data that you get is usually of the city that you are in. So, for example, I live in Delhi. I know people in Delhi. I'll be able to get responses only from Delhi. But
Right.
in order to do a good research, you need opinions from our entire country, right? India, the population is so big. So to be
Yeah.
able to generalize something, to be able to say that your finding is accurate, to be able to say something that if you have made a test and if another person takes it from a different city in India, they would get the
Mm.
same results. So for
Yeah.
that, you need representative data that we call in psychological terms. So
Mm.
SirWay Me helps in that. We have a pan-India network of 5,000 students and professionals across 167 universities. So we help you collect data from our network. We are expanding on that. We have presently done researches with University of Nottingham in the UK, the psychology department of Ashoka University, Amity University, Delhi University. So data collection is the aspect that we cater to for now, and we also
Mm.
give research services. My co-founder Shailesh Jaiswal, he's a national level researcher. So we help in giving you guidance and mentorship of how research is to be done in India, which we feel the country lacks, the student lack,
Mm.
and data analysis, to understand the new softwares that are there, how to interpret the data, the meaning from your findings. So these are the services that we provide, and we strongly want to revolutionize the research industry,
Yeah.
because if you are filling a form, you are filling it because you have a friend and he has requested you to do so, right?
Mm.
But you are not getting something in return. In order to be able to fill more forms of other researchers that you do not know, you should be incentivized. That is,
Yeah.
a monetary or a gift voucher should be given to you for your time, because you are giving your honest opinion, right? And it also
Mm.
encourages you to respond honestly, to
Mm.
fill those surveys. So we have incentivized the process of data collection, in which when you fill surveys from SirWay Me, you get a
Mm.
monetary compensation. And we've also made the service attractive. It's not a simple boring Google form which is white in color. There are motivational affirmations in between, there are animations, you get to know
Mm.
quotes from the psychologist, you get to know the results of your participation, why you participated in a particular study. So that is the change that we want to bring in the country, for people to participate in research
Mm.
and to do authentic research, jiska
Right.
data can be validated, it can be generalized
Mm.
to solve problems.
So you are saying that you guys are going pan India, are
Yeah.
in pan India phase. So can you tell us the benefit of a huge sample size instead of one city?
Absolutely. So in statistics, when we psychological statistics in
Yeah.
research, when the sample size increases, that is the
Mm.
number of people participating in your study increases, the chances of error gets minimized.
Mm.
Because let's say if I'm talking to 50 people. Now in
Yeah.
50 people, there is a possibility of 20 people lying. And
Mm.
I am getting the data of 30 people that cannot be used to predict something, right? Because
Right.
30 people cannot rely on their opinions. But if I have a data of 500 people, in
Mm.
500 people or 1000 people, if there are 200 people lying, I still have data of 800 people to rely on. So that
Yeah.
can be, used to say something. If 800 people are saying something, that means ki chalo, let me look into the phenomena, that might be true.
Mm.
When in science, you must have heard, specifically for diseases and illnesses, people say
Mm.
that 1 in 3 people have the chance of developing breast cancer. 1 in 3
Mm.
women do.
Mm.
Every 8 minutes a woman dies because of cancer. So these generalizations, we are able to reach to these numbers because data has been collected from a lot of people.
Mm.
When World Health Organization collects data from, all the countries across the globe, they are able to reach to these generalizations because these many people have been surveyed.
Mm.
Recently, an independent private organization came up with the research of how happy countries are, the happiness index, in which
Mm.
India ranked among the top countries of the world, right? Now, if you and I think about it, we won't agree to these statistics, because
Definitely
we
not.
know, right, India is not that
Yeah.
happy. It's a developing country, and
Yeah.
right, but now the discrepancy in the results is because of the data that they've collected,
Mm.
right? We don't know how many cities they surveyed, how many rural areas they surveyed, to
Mm.
be able to say that India is one of the happiest countries in the world.
Mm.
So that is how the reach of the data, the number of people that you have, the quality of the data affects your
Yeah.
research. And we through SurveyMe are bridging that gap, because it's high time we need to focus on research, and that representativeness need to come. So that
Mm.
is the change that we hopefully are aiming to bring.
Hmm. So if someone comes to you with a phenomena that someone who watches more documentaries is more likely to get higher marks. So like let's just do a hypothesis, right? How would you
Right.
go about it?
Right. So for this, we would
Yeah.
first want to, narrow down their research objectives. If you
Hmm.
say ki there is the hypothesis that someone who watches more documentaries gets higher marks. So
Yeah.
first we need to define what kind of documentaries are we talking about.
Yeah.
Are they informational documentaries or just documentaries, let's say on coffee, how you
Hmm.
make coffee, skills of architecture or anything. So what kind of documentaries is what we need to narrow it down first.
Hmm.
And then when we talk about marks, what is the criteria of judging a higher IQ or
Right.
marks in that
Yeah.
by watching a particular documentary? So do we take test score as your standard of measuring this? Do we take your increase in the level of information that you've had of
Hmm.
measuring this? So maybe a verbal test, a written test. So that is
Hmm.
how we, first we conceptualize the research problem and
Hmm.
we take the variables. Here, documentary and the IQ test are your two
Hmm.
variables which we are working on. We are measuring the impact of documentaries on the IQ test. So we'll have to narrow those down. Then after that, we'll have to do a review of literature to know if similar past
Hmm.
researches have been done on the concept, to know ki, chalo, if the results of this prediction, this correlation has already been proved, then maybe I need to look at a new aspect of viewing at this problem because the work
Right.
has already been done. Right? There is no
Hmm.
point repeating the same thing. And if there
But the
hasn't
work
been
has
work,
not been done by SirWay Me, so it might not be good.
oh, thank you. So if the work has
Yeah.
not been done, then we work on the newer nuances of that phenomena,
Hmm.
right? And after that we decide the sample that we want to study in, the population that we will survey or take for experiments. We also
Hmm.
decide the methodology, whether I want to collect data by surveying individuals, by saying if you have watched documentaries, please tell us what you what you've learned from it and how did it
Right.
impact your scores, basically by their experience. Or we'll make actual experiments in which we'll take two groups, we'll make them watch a documentary and then we'll make them take the test, and then we calculate their scores and see if there has been increase in the knowledge because of the documentary. So that is how we decide on the methodology, and there are several types of methods that we can take:
Hmm.
quantitative, qualitative. In that we have subdivisions of experiment, survey, questionnaire, interview, and then we analyze that data. So
So
these
you
are the
guys
steps
focus
that
on
we take.
survey.
We offer you different methodologies. If you We offer you participants from pan
Yeah.
India. So if you want the participant to participate in an experiment, we can do that. If you want them to fill a survey, we can do that. If you want them, to interview them, we can do that. So
Hmm.
data collection is what we offer. And for now, the standard in psychological researchers is if you take surveys and quantify the studies, there are
Hmm.
a more chance of publishing them, right? The journals accept them more. Right now the
Okay.
trend is that. So for and surveys, and we use surveys because you get a large data in less number of time, right?
Yeah.
Generalizable data. For example, you can say that when Domino's does a survey, they want to know about their how their pizzas taste or how
Hmm.
affordable is that. For that they send you a survey form, right? And through that data they are able to revamp their pizzas. So
Hmm.
it's a very easy way in which the survey taker is able to understand in simple words what they want. They have options to tick from. It's not very time consuming and you're able to get large opinions.
Hmm.
So let's say if you want to participate in an experiment, I would require 30 to maybe 60 minutes of your time. But if
Hmm.
I request you to take a survey, I will be asking you to give 10 minutes of your time. So depending upon the nature of the research, the methodology gets affected. But surveys are usually taken by a lot of researchers because you get a large amount of data which is representative in nature. So that helps.
And the compensation that you have to pay would also be lower, right? When
The
you have to take a
compensation,
survey.
right. So the compensation depends upon how long is your survey, what are
Okay.
the quality of the participants that you're taking. So let's say
Hmm.
if I'm asking you to fill a 45-minute survey, obviously
Hmm.
I won't be giving you 30 rupees for that, right? I'll be giving you 200 rupees. But if I
Yeah.
want to if I request you to fill a 5-minute survey, then maybe you will do it for 30 rupees.
Yeah.
So the cost depends on the contribution of your time in the particular study for you to feel good about it after filling it, and for you to encourage, I want you to encourage you to fill those studies, right?
Yeah.
So incentive helps.
Yeah. So you were talking about the different methodologies.
Right. So for the different methodologies in research, we classify them into two categories. That is qualitative and quantitative. Quantitative means using numbers as your data set, and qualitative means using experiences of the participant, the knowledge that they possess, how they are able to speak things, their words and language. So not using numbers, basically, that comes in qualitative. In quantitative, now there are different methods. For example, you can, when you use a survey, then that is a method of analyzing data. Or even if you are making your participant narrate their experiences, you are
Yeah.
counting the number of times. Frequency count is a is a method that is used. That means you are counting the number of times the word is coming up in their experience. So basically, everything that you want to analyze, a number has to be given to that particular answer that they're providing you, the response of the participant. Whereas in qualitative, we use thematic analysis, for example. So we categorize the experiences of the participant into the themes that they are coming. So let's say presently I'm doing a research on the challenges of online data collections that are being faced by Indian PhD scholars. And for this, I don't want a number that this is the challenge that is coming these many number of times. I want to know what are their experiences to be able to utilize that for survey.
Okay.
So I am generating themes. If I'm going to the causes of those experiences. Why are you facing this problem? How can this be tackled? Now, these are some things which cannot be quantified, right? I need to
Yeah.
understand their perspective. So when we talk about perspective, that is when we go to qualitative. It depends on the research that
Yeah.
you are taking. If I want to understand challenges, it's better to go into qualitative. But if I want to understand how many times a particular challenge occurs in India,
Yeah.
then it's better to go to quantitative.
So if you, for example, want to increase the quality of life of a person with autism, you won't go
Right.
to the quantitative route, like what is their IQ and things like that. You will see what their experience in life actually is, how they see the world, right?
Right. So, I am personally a big believer and supporter of mixed methods, in which I feel that you cannot rely on just one methodology. You take both for increasing quality of life. You take interviews of an autistic participant, and
Yeah.
you understand how they feel things should be done, and you also give them a survey to understand the norms and the standards that have been followed till now, the resources that they have, are they helping to increase the
Yeah.
quality of life, or something new needs to be done. So when we combine both the methods, obviously the data that we get is really, really rich to plan an intervention on it, to plan an action on it, to do something about it. So we always say that good researchers, especially now in psychology, take a mix of interviews or surveys,
Yeah.
quantitative and qualitative. And interviews and surveys are the two basic methods that researchers use, especially in India, to get data. It's easy, it's quick, it's accessible, and you know how to do it, right? So that helps.
So are case studies also a part of research?
Absolutely. Case studies fall under the qualitative methodology, and they help you to understand a phenomena in depth. So for case study, I want to study the life of a person. I could go and live with that person for a particular time, for 6 months to 1 year, to be able to know, one to one, how is that happening. I
You
understand
will
their
have to
history, their
compensate them a lot.
preferences. Right. So for case studies, because the participant has to agree. So, right. So incentive would not be for a number of hours, but the time duration for 6 months or 1 year, that will enter into a contractual basis for survey to be able to do a case study. But the problem with case studies are the results are not generalizable, because
Yeah.
I'm studying one person in detail, so I cannot apply the experiences to a whole population, right? So there are a few people in India, let's say, who go for case studies, but the data that you are able to know the life of one person in such detail. So it depends on the researcher and what kind of study they want to do.
So would you say biographies and autobiographies are just a way of case study.
Right. So biographies and autobiographies can also be, analyzed to understand the life of
Yeah.
someone. So, for example, let's say if we want to know about Mahatma Gandhi, he is not
Mm,
alive, right? So we
mm,
cannot go and talk to him to know about him. So we rely on
mm,
secondary sources of data, which we call, which have already been published. So
mm,
then we go to biographies and autobiographies, usually done to analyze historical figures.
mm,
But when we want to know something in the present and how it exists, we do go
mm,
to books. But the primary data, that is the present data that we want to collect, the better way of doing is
mm.
by talking to the individual, or by, making them do an experiment or a survey or something.
Yeah. And why is there a need to do research? I mean, what is the benefit?
Right. So, Akash, let's say you have lost something.
Mm,
Let's say your
yeah.
car keys, and you've been finding them for a long time, and you find them. How do you feel? You feel really nice, that right, after finding something that you've been looking for a long time, your car
Yes.
keys. You'll feel great. You feel relieved. So research is exactly this way. It is like finding knowledge. It is
Mm,
the quest for new knowledge. And the fact is that the knowledge is not owned by anyone. You are creating it in the process. You are finding it. So that is what, in simple terms, what research is. And when you are able to find knowledge that has
mm.
utility, which means knowledge that
Yeah.
can be applied, it can be used to create something, it can be used for the betterment of the society. That is how you can say that your research is being utilized. It's applicable research, it's good
Mm,
research. So let's take an example. In the pandemic, there was a strong need of a vaccine, right?
mm,
Millions of dollars were spent on making a vaccine that would help us fight the virus, that would reduce the symptoms of the
mm,
virus, the effects of the virus, the impact that it has on us. So that is a product of good research. A lot of research went into developing and creating that knowledge, which we call as a vaccine, which helped us to fight the pandemic. So for that, we would say that research is very, very important, especially for
mm.
India. It's imperative. It's one of the youngest countries with the sharpest minds. So research is booming. It's really needed. We can say
Mm,
that with the coming up of the national education policy, right, in our
mm.
educational system, this is going to come in 2022 for
What is
central
it about?
university. Right. So for in the national education policy which is coming, there is being a much needed change in the curriculum. The undergraduation
Mm,
courses are now going to be of 4 years, not for 3 years, and the last year, the fourth year, is going to be research compulsory for all disciplines. Whether you
wow.
are studying economics or psychology, you will have to do a research in your field of
Yeah.
specialization for one complete year. So that is what the importance is of research, and it is slowly coming up. So
Mm,
obviously, if you are going to research on a particular concept for 1 year, you would be given that much time to collect good data. And this is the
yeah.
need for research startups to come up, for mentorship and guidance in research to come up, because now students are also being encouraged to do it across fields. It's not just
Yeah.
something that psychology is going to do. So this is why research is needed. The vaccine is the result of research, and we need Indians and young students to participate in research to be able to
Yes.
contribute to our country, to do
Mm,
something about. There are so many problems here, right? Collecting
mm,
data is just one of them that we want to cater to. And thanks to shows like Shark Tank, you see that there are entrepreneurs who are wanting to solve problems that exist in our country, and everything requires research to
mm,
understand why it is happening, how can we tackle it. So that is why research is going to be the future,
mm. How
and it's starting
difficult
now.
how difficult is it to interpret the data?
Right. So data interpretation, or finding meaning
Mm,
from the numbers that you have, finding meaning from the experiences that you have, I wouldn't say it's difficult. It is challenging because you are required to see something from a new perspective, right?
yeah.
When we say think outside the box, there are certain plain numbers on a piece of paper. It's really interesting. It's like a treasure hunt. You have to
Mm,
explore the hidden meaning from those numbers. So it's
mm,
not difficult per se, but it requires a lot of effort, time, and that skill to be able to find something from that plain piece of paper. And
mm,
there are, people who are skilled at it to such a level that we have a job of just analyzing data. People are called data analysts, and they are paid huge. They are paid in lakhs and crores, for interpreting, finding the hidden meaning, finding what your data, what your results are trying to tell you. How will it help you? What are your findings saying? The treasure hunt part, it's being done by professionals. Companies employ data analysts. When you study statistics, economics, or maths, that helps you understand the data that you have. And in psychology also, in your undergraduation and your master's course, psychology students can relate. They are taught research methodology and data processing, and it's a compulsory paper, right? Because if you are doing a research, you need to know what your data says. What is it telling you? Are you able to understand what the data is trying to tell you, or you are thinking in a different direction? So that is why it's really, really important to, to study what it implies and to able to create meaning out of it.
Yeah. So do you guys employ data analyst?
Right, we do. So I don't personally specialize in data analysis. I am working
Hmm.
on that and reading on that, but that is not my specialization. But Shailesh does, and we
Hmm.
hire data analysts from industries, right, who are in this field and who have already worked in this field. They have a certain number of experience to be able to help you understand your data better.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
it's important to take people who have experience in that.
Yeah. So let's move on to the subject of examination. Right.
Right.
Yeah. So the conditioning given by the Indian society, the pressure by school authorities, parents, to score good marks and all, it
Hmm.
causes what is called examination anxiety.
Absolutely
Children
right.
are scared, that even while studying, they have very negative thoughts. What if they fail? What will be the consequences? So, how can they alleviate this anxiety?
Right. So examination anxiety is extremely prevalent in our country,
Hmm.
because there is a lot of pressure on students to score good marks. The board results
Definitely.
are used, right? Not anymore,
Yeah.
chalo, thank God, from this year, but it was there and it's
Yeah.
still going to be there to crack into IITs and
अब
everything.
नहीं होगा.
So from 2022 for admission into central universities, like we
Hmm.
have NEP coming. Along with that, there are not for, let's say, if you want to get into Delhi University, there is going to be an entrance. CUET, Central University Entrance Test is going to come.
Hmm.
CUCET, Common Entrance Test for those. So your board marks won't be, analyzed anymore. It will
Oh.
be how you perform on those tests. So a lot of changes are coming in 2022 with the change in the
Yeah.
education system, the curriculum. That is really nice. They're
Hmm.
giving more importance to research and to the aptitude of the student more than your 12th marks, let's say. Right. So, but
Hmm.
even to get into IITs, to crack those entrance tests as well, students do face a lot of pressures. They go into coaching, and like we are discussing about examination anxiety, you get negative thoughts, you feel nauseated, you
Hmm.
you sweat a lot, you forget things. So that is a phenomena that exists, and feeling a certain degree of nervousness before your test is normal. That is okay. We all
Yeah.
feel it. But if that nervousness increases to such a great level that you forget everything in your exam, and you, to
Hmm.
the point that you don't want to enter into the examination hall, that happens to a lot of students. That is when we label it as examination anxiety, because it is a psychological problem that you are facing.
Hmm.
And in order to overcome that, there are certain things that you can do. So these are some examination tips that I usually follow for my exams. So the first is, taking them from psychological concepts. First is, I'd like to talk about tactile memory. So tactile means touch, and your skin also has certain kind of memory. So let's say that your exam is on Monday at 9 a.m. So I would request and urge you all to prepare for your exam by studying at in the entire week at 9 a.m. Because you know that your exam is going to happen at 9 a.m. And if you study every day at 9 a.m., so when you will be giving your exam now, you will be able to better recall the information, because your skin has that recall of the memory ki every day I have gotten up at 9 a.m. to prepare for my exam, and now when I'm giving the exam I'm able to recall things better. So that
Mm.
helps really, making a structured routine and setting a particular time of studying that is correlated with the exam timings. So that is going to really help because of the tactile memory. Then you must have heard about students, your classmates, parents and teachers advising you to, look at your notes at night before sleeping, right? एक बार
No,
देख लो
my
रात को सोने से
teachers were very
पहले.
bad.
uh, so right, so if you look at your notes or the concept that you study the entire day
Mm.
before sleeping, it helps you. And we can attribute that to mere exposure effect in psychology.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
advertisements use that, right? If you see a thing
Mm.
again and again, you are likely to register it. That is how you remember brand names, right?
Mm.
So that is how you remember taglines of the
Yeah.
brands that we use. So if you look at your notes before sleeping at every night, you are conditioning your brain
Mm.
to, see that thing again and it's coming in your memory, especially before sleeping. Instead of scrolling on your phone, if you look at the notes, it will actually help you during an exam. And while you are giving the exam, studies also say that if you drink a lot of water during exams, because of writing too much or because of the heat that is present, dehydration
Mm.
happens. So there is a 5% increase in results that have been witnessed by these studies if you drink a lot of water at regular intervals. So I
Mm.
do drink a lot of water when I'm not able to recall an answer, let's say during an exam.
Mm.
I drink water, I calm my mind, I think for 2 minutes, and after a point I am able to understand that how will I go about attempting that question. So water really helps with students forget to drink during the exams. And
Mm.
then obviously we have our standard time management, developing a routine that helps. And looking at past question papers of the subject that you are attempting, because there are questions that are picked up from that, preparing those questions, writing answers in advance, because
Mm.
our education system is such that even if you have a great typing ability and you make your notes online, that is not much of a use. But if you write a lot, then it helps with your speed in the examination and you are able to better recall. So
Mm.
all these things that we do, these are some tips. They help with your attention, focus, and recallability. They are all related to your memory, right? So if you know these tricks, why not make the best use of it? Your skin has memory to study at a particular time. Water helps with attention because your mind gets cooler. So that will
Yeah.
also help with your recalling. So practicing those tips have really helped me through all my psychology examinations journey, and I can tell you that they do work.
You also gave a tip about wearing the same jacket, right?
It's not a tip, okay? I do that. I wouldn't. So you will say कि जैसे in Korea na
Mm.
people do not take a shower before their exam.
Mm.
And they wear the same clothes they did the last day, because like we discussed, the skin has memory. So you've been sitting in that particular tire and studying all day.
Mm.
So when you go and give the exam in that particular attire, because you
Mm.
have studied in that, and your books have been surrounded with that particular jacket that you are wearing, let's say, so you are able to better recall the information. That is what
Mm.
researchers say. So what I did was, during my Delhi University examinations, I used to wear a particular pink color jacket
Mm.
for all my examinations because I used to study in that. And it
Mm.
also acts as a comfort that, it gives you a psychological security that I
Yeah.
studied in this. So I'm writing, I'm in the same environment, right? The environment isn't
Yeah.
getting changed. Even if I'm in the examination hall, because I'm wearing the same clothes, the sense of comfort comes.
Right.
It
Familiarity.
it helps. Yeah, familiarity comes, exactly. It
Yeah.
helps me personally.
Yeah.
These tips help you, get through examination anxiety as well. If you're wearing the same clothes,
Mm.
same colored clothes or a particular color, it does help you.
मम्मी मारेगी नहाते क्यों नहीं हो? अच्छा. So is late night studying okay, or should you like allocate some time for sleeping?
Absolutely, you need to sleep for at least 8 hours before your examination, right?
Hmm.
Because if you don't and you think कि इतना भी revise कर लेते हैं, you will feel your brain will not be active and not be able to pay attention during the
Hmm.
examination time, right? so you won't be able to recall things. And then even if you decide to drink water, it will not help, because you
Hmm.
need your brain cells to rest. And
Yeah.
if your study pattern is in such a way, in India, the exams are held in the morning hours, right? In early
Hmm.
mornings, not even in the noon. So I think it's advisable to change your study pattern in which you are sleeping at night, because our body clock functions normally in that way, right? You are supposed to
Hmm.
sleep at night. The sleeping hormones are secreted at that time, and in the morning you work, you right, you study, you go to school, you go out. So it's advisable to change your body clock in the to the particular setting, as you'll be
Hmm.
attempting your paper at that time.
Hmm. Some more tips like I want to give, like I want you to fact check, right?
Hmm.
I used to go to a psychologist. She told me that study for 40 minutes, then take a
Right.
break of 20 minutes because,
Absolutely. Attention span.
yeah, all the chunk of information that you can gather is within that period only, right? Where
Absolutely.
put your phone, just throw your phone somewhere. Yeah, because
Distractions, eliminating
yeah,
distractions.
even if it is in flight mode, the mere presence of an object, that awareness that it is in front of you or near you, that can
Right.
give you temptation to use it, right? And what I used to do, wake up early in the morning. Does caffeine help, as a stimulant,
To a certain extent, it does help to wake you up, but it's not
if
good
you do
for the
not have
body, right?
tolerance?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And it's
So
not
yeah.
healthy. Your heartbeat increases, then there are chances that you could get even more nervous because of the
Yeah,
caffeine,
it can definitely, it can.
right?
I mean, if you are not
So,
used to it, then yeah,
hmm,
physiological symptoms can occur. So I
hmm,
used to meditate for an hour, like waking up early, just to calm my mind. And uh, in the morning I did not used to study anything, because
hmm,
that would just I for me it would used to trigger up my anxiety, because fear of missing out. I have left this, I have left that. So
hmm,
nothing in the morning, just meditate for an hour, then work out
hmm,
for 2 hours, you know and eating something healthy.
hmm.
And you know yeah, that's it. So is it fine?
Personally, it's absolutely brilliant. I've personally never opened my books in the morning, on the day of the examination.
Yeah, it's
Right.
very. Yeah.
Yeah, you can listen to calming music if you work out, that is great. If you meditate,
Yeah.
that is absolutely brilliant, because you need to rest your mind, right? Make it
Hmm.
come at a calm level for you to recall the information when you are giving the examination. So
Because yeah,
these are
सुबह
certain,
आपने. Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
These are certain trips that actually work and help you.
Hmm. Because whatever you have studied, सुबह आप कुछ उखाड़ नहीं सकते और पढ़ के. It will just give you more anxiety.
Right. I remember in an interview, press conference of the movie Dhoni when it was released, Mahendra Singh Dhoni, the cricketer and the sportsman, former captain
Hmm.
of our Indian team, he said ki, when he had to, juggle between playing cricket and giving exams, he said that my father told me कि बेटा अभी अगर पूरे साल पढ़ाई करी है तो आप एग्जाम में अच्छा कर लोगे, और अभी
Hmm.
एक दिन पहले सुबह उठ के पढ़ने से कुछ होने तो वाला है नहीं,
कुछ
तो
नहीं होगा.
आप हाँ, जितनी पढ़ाई, it's about being consistent, right? If you studied throughout
Hmm.
the year, if you attended classes, then you are likely to score a little better in comparison to mugging up material in 3 days. So
Hmm.
it's butt obvious. So time management, not procrastinating for Indian students,
Hmm.
that is what is needed.
Can you tell us about the slope of what was that forgetting curve, that
Right.
memory
So
decline? Yeah.
yeah. So there was a researcher called Eppinghurst. It is also known as the Eppinghurst curve or the forgetting curve, in which we talk about attention span. That is, like you've been talking about, ki when we are making our study routine, the maximum and the best recall is in the initial 20 minutes, because the
Hmm.
curve goes in this way and then it comes down. Right.
Hmm.
So in the initial 20 minutes or half an hour when you are studying, you are able to remember that information. But after that, if you keep on exerting yourself, let's say you're studying for 2 hours, the information that you are taking in the second hour of your study, that will not be remembered. So that is what is the forgetting curve about. This is where we get about, the principle about attention span. Ki you study for, let's say, 40 minutes, then you take a break and then you study again, because if you are
Mm.
continuously studying, that the curve is declining only after that.
Mm.
So
So
this is
is
where the
that
principle of
yeah,
comes.
also the case that then it will be steep, right? Your memory would be steep of everything you have studied. Let's say you only retain 20%.
Right,
Okay.
right.
In the initial start of the year. So
Hmm.
gradually you recall again and again, you study again and again, and your memory of that chapter increases. So
Right.
is that why allocation of time beforehand and studying way before the exam is essential rather than cramming up?
Absolutely. So, in order to better recall information, we need to make sure that it goes into our long term memory, not our
Yeah.
short term memory. Because the memory systems in our brain are also, they work in a really interesting way. Like
Mm.
a computer, they also have memory span in them, right?
Yeah.
So, if you are in your short term memory, it is likely to be there for a few seconds. But if it goes into your long term memory, then it is likely to be there for, a number of years, or let's say
Mm.
even your lifespan, provided that you are revising that information again
Yeah.
and again for your brain to register it again and again. So that is why we say that if you study throughout the year and you revise before the exam, the information has entered into your long term memory for you to reproduce it in the examination sheet. But if
Mm.
you are studying it a night before the exam or a few days before the exam, it's in your short term memory, and because of the nature of the memory, it's not good, the information is not retained, right?
Mm.
Because you haven't revised it. So that is why revisions are important. And even if, let's say, you are studying 10 days before the exam, that would work. But in
Yeah.
that case, you have to really be smart about your studying. You have to follow the
Mm.
method of elimination, right? You have to be selective about your studying,
Yeah.
because in 10 days you cannot study everything.
Mm.
So the things that are important here in previous examination question papers come, the topics that your teacher told you are important come. So if you study these things, these will help you, pass the exam, sort of get average
Mm.
marks. But if you really want to score well, then you need to study before the 10 days. You need to have a structure, you need to drink water, you need to sleep on time, you need to eat healthy. So
The
these things are
20/80
needed.
rule, right?
Yeah.
20% of the most important content is you know comes 80% of the time, and that's how
ab-
teachers also structure the examination questions like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So just
Absolutely.
one last the supplements, I was very fascinated with the concept of neurogenesis, uh,
Right.
renewal of brain cells and new connections that are formed. So the
Hmm.
supplements that I used to take were fish oil, ashwagandha, brahmi, multivitamin. It might work, it might not work, and turmeric, so that inflammation is decreased, because inflammation in the brain can be very harmful. Quitting drinking and smoking, because damage to the brain cells is very likely if you
Hmm.
drink a lot, especially during the time of examination. It causes undue amount of stress, so people used to cope up with the drinking, right?
Right.
Proper sleep, that has been dealt with. Nutrition, adequate
Hmm.
nutrition,
Hmm.
proper diet chart. And what else? Vitamin D, not
Hmm.
from tablet but actual sunlight, because it also provides serotonin, so it,
Hmm.
it also helps in memory.
Right.
Yeah, so that is it.
That is really nice. Yeah, eating all these supplements, ashwagandha especially, it really helps.
Yeah, it is
Hmm.
one of the only things I believe in Ayurveda.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just stop the recording. It has been 1 hour, right?